Welcome everyone to Too Long Don't Listen. This is the PMM Talk series, and today I have with me an amazing guest. Her name is Michele. We'll get to know her better during this episode, where we're going to talk about tracking your success as a product marketing manager, which is a big issue, right, Michele?
Well, the drama, truly. Like the chaos, the drama, I'm here for it.
And I'm happy you're here, and I want to welcome you to the podcast. And I'd love for you to give an intro to our listeners, tell us about who you are and what you've been up to in the product marketing world.
Yes, Michele Nieberding, currently a director of product marketing at a startup called MetaRouter, which is in the customer data infrastructure space, if you will. So a little complex, a little fun. I love a challenge, and we'll get into that as well. Like the industries that product marketers are in, especially in B2B tech and SaaS, is like the wild, wild west right now. In my opinion, it's like the best way possible. But been in product marketing, almost 10 years now. Started in B2B SaaS sales. So I come from the sales side, kind of fell into product marketing, which was really fun. So I did sales for 3 years. And then I always knew I wanted to do marketing. And so I went to a couple agencies, learned a little bit of everything. So anyone that has worked for an agency or knows friends that have, like, God bless them, because you learn a lot and you learn quickly, and your job really is pretty much reliant on your performance, right? I mean, if a customer returns, like, your job could be at stake. And so it was like a very fun learning environment, very high pressure, but in the best way possible. And then I was like, okay, I sold the products. I know products. I learned a ton of marketing. And then I combined that for what now is really like truly a discipline of product marketing. I actually had gone back to the same company I did sales for product marketing. So it was really cool because, again, I already knew the product and knew how to demo it and knew how to talk about it and knew why people cared. But then to like learn the product marketing discipline was really a cool transition. I've been doing that in B2B tech ever since. So
Wow. Thanks for the intro. And it's funny because you're the second person on this show to talk about shifting from sales to product marketing. And it's ironic because product marketers sometimes, or most of the time, don't get along with sales. So I'm just going to say that.
episode. Oh my gosh. This is true. I mean, there are tips, and again, like maybe a whole other episode on how to kind of get that buy-in or build that sales confidence. But no, it's a real thing. But I will say, interestingly enough, I think almost anyone can make a good product marketer. I think a question I get a lot of, like, here's my background. Like, what do you think? Would I like product marketing? Could I do product marketing? Would I be a good product marketer? And I feel like it's with everything in marketing, like it depends. But I've helped friends that come from content. I've helped friends that come from like engineering side of the house or product management. So like I say that because I think one of the cool things about product marketing is that there's a lot of different backgrounds that make a product marketer. You just have to know kind of like what your superpower is and how that helps within a product marketing kind of role. So
That is so true. I completely agree with you. And we were talking about this before the recording. Like, we both got into product marketing without really knowing what it was. And I'm so, so happy you come from a B2B SaaS background, because I haven't spoken to or interviewed, like formally interviewed, anyone who works as a PMM in a startup environment. And I do think it's very different from like corporates. So we'll get into it. Can you, before I start with all my like career questions, can you tell me what your definition of product marketing is today?
yeah. So I'm like a sucker for good analogies. So I kind of always think in that way. But I feel like product marketing is like the brain or like the nerve center of like a body, right? Because you have like the different areas of the body. You've got sales, product, marketing, whatever it might be, and you're that highway that's connecting the dots throughout so that you can help the arm and sales, do their job, and the leg, of I don't know, maybe marketing to do their job. So you are that kind of like brain that helps everyone else function in the right way, in motion, working in lockstep, literally, I guess, to be successful. So, it's just a really interesting kind of centralized, place to be for an extroverted introvert like me, which means like I love learning from people and working with different people. I actually went to school for hospitality, which I do nothing with now, but that's neither here nor there.
Okay.
And now you're like I mean, but I say that because I guess one thing, and thinking about anyone who wants to get into product marketing, if you don't love working with different people, different personalities, different stakeholders, maybe not the best fit. But for even, again, like I'm an introvert at heart, it's a really good way to think, like if you want to be strategic of how everything works together, is a really cool way to do that. So, but I will say too, caveat, product marketing as a definition is defined differently in every company. We talk about what that means between startup and larger enterprises. I've worked at all of them. I think my smallest company now, 30 people, to my biggest company was over 8,000 people. So definitely the definition changes, or there's different like subsets of product marketing, just like there's subsets of marketing, right? There's customer marketing versus demand generation, right? There's different subsets within product marketing as well. But yes, the definition really changes. I think the thing to really anchor on is that you are kind of like the brain of the body, making sure everyone works together to get things done. So
I love this analogy. It really helps you understand how you said it's a cross-functional role. So you're going to be involved with so many decisions in a company and you're going to be driving different initiatives. What's interesting with your definition as well is that you you're differentiating it from corporate versus smaller company. But I think that's why today PMM is such a hot role. Like a lot of startups are hiring for it because they know that we're kind of like versatile. We can adapt to any situation, build a website, track results at the same time. Like it's a bit of a of an interesting role. And so the theme for this episode in particular, which to be honest with you, Michelle, is something I'm also trying to figure out on my own. So I thought we could just talk about it on this podcast. It's how do you make sure that you're able to measure your impact as a PMM in a company? Because as you said, we're driving these different functions or helping them, but how can we shine in the process? And this is a bit, a bit selfish, but I think it's okay to be
you have to.
because then you're going to sell yourself, right? So yeah, what are your observations and like kind of your opinion on measuring your impact as a PMM?
Yeah. So I good timing because I think we talked about this too. So I'm working on a presentation for the product marketing alliance next week on this, but it's interesting because as part of that, I don't like to learn in a silo. I like to talk. I mean, similarly, I talked to a bunch of different PMMs, different industries, different roles, like what is working for them. Because similarly, like I think OKRs is probably one of the most confusing and controversial things for
Yeah.
product marketing because we do so much, but there's not one thing, one metric that we directly own. So the way I like to think about it, again, we'll go with an analogy here, is like product marketing is like the rising tide that lifts up the entire boat of the company. Now, the good part of a rising tide is it does lift everyone up. The bad part is not everyone knows like why do tides rise? Like not, what is the science behind it and the why behind it and like what needs to happen so that phenomenon, if you will, does occur. And so that's where it gets really tricky is like what people know this happens. We know that product marketing is important. We know it can, really lift up everyone else in the company, but like why or what makes a good product marketer, what makes you successful? And to your point, when you don't have that core metric that, MQL or whatever it might be, but I will say if you are a product marketer being like tasked with MQLs, like run, like get out. My hot take of the day, like don't just run. But like you have to figure out like what is that thing, right? Like what is that piece part that I can go to my performance review at the end of the year and say, hey,
Yeah.
here was my impact on the company. And I'll give you my perspective and then I can maybe share what some others have said personally. And maybe this is the sales girl in me, but my philosophy as a product marketer is that if we're not hitting our revenue goals as a company, that I am doing something wrong. Now, what I mean by that is that, again, think of like everything you do in product marketing, your pitch decks, your website updates, those silly one pagers that, probably no one wants to do, right? All of those activities, those maybe binary metrics. Did you do this or, did you do 5 customer stories in a quarter? Did you make 3 new landing pages? Did you launch, one product, like tier 1 product, right? All these things. That is part of the tide that is going to help you lift up to hit your revenue numbers. So that's a caveat, right? That's like a business line objective. Like as a company, we need to hit X amount of ARR or X amount in return revenue or whatever it might be, but you have to be really specific about what the activities you did to help get to that point, and be really vocal about it too. Because like you said, like no one's going to realize it unless you speak up and say that. Now we can get really tactical and say, okay, what, under this big revenue number, like what are the kind of KPIs that you need to do to get there? Now that very much depends. My presentation next, I love a good theme. They call me Theme McGee. I love a good theme. My presentation next week is about how OKRs are like video games. Like the way that you win a game depends on the game you're playing. So I'll date myself here, right? But the way that you win Mario Kart, right, being the first one across the line is very different than how you're going to win at Super Smash Brothers, right? Which is like a game. You're the last one standing. So, you might have to be the fastest. You might have to be the last one standing. You might need to have the highest score or like the most revenue, right? It like depends on what game you're playing in the organization to then figure out a plan for how you're going to win that game and what is your role as maybe the person in the driver's seat. So a lot of nuance, like I hate, that's what makes it so hard, right? Is it depends on what that corporate goal is and how you're going to like layer up into that.
This is so interesting. And I just want to also define those abbreviations you mentioned. So OKRs, Objective Key Results, MQLs, Marketing Qualified Leads. We can also dive into this a little bit more. But before we do, because that's going to be like the dry content of the episode, I just want to share one story. I mean, not a story, but more like my hot take on measuring my success as a product marketer. I feel like most of the time, and I've worked mostly with startups, B2B SaaS in their early stage, so seed to Series A. And usually I find it that my results or my KPIs are obviously extremely tied to the company goals, but sometimes the company goals, especially in startups, are not very well defined. So it gets to a point where it's like, okay, we'll wait and see, and I'm going to produce all this content, and then we'll find a way to attribute it to sales or whatever, and it doesn't work this way. So I just wanted to also get your thoughts on this. Like, it sounds like you have a very clear idea of being the strongest or the fastest driver in the car. How do you find that correlation with the company objectives? Like, how can you make sure that you position yourself as a PMM who will align with company goals without losing yourself and your own learning and growth in the process?
Yeah, so I think there's two things there, right? One is like what is your plan for contributing to that? So like you said, do I need to build a bunch of content? Do I need to do more webinars? Do I need to do like there's so many things you can do as a product marketer. Again, especially for startups, like I'm a solo product marketer on a marketing team of 2.
Okay.
My boss does a bunch of events and kind of like paid digital, and I'm pretty much doing everything else. And so that's like a broad scope of what product marketing is. So how do I prioritize my time to say, okay, what is going to have the biggest like company impact? And for something like a startup, let's see, what's a good game to like represent like brand awareness, right? Like what's a good, I don't know, Pokemon Snap, right? Like you want to like
I love your game reference. Like, it's so interesting.
I'm like not a big gamer, but again, I'm like, N64 is coming back now. Like
I was gonna say Angry Bird, but I prefer your games.
Well, okay, even better. Let's take Angry Bird because I feel less old that way.
Okay.
So if you're taking Angry Bird and you're trying to like smash through either a new category or like make some noise about like, hey, here I'm the big red bird, like I'm the one that you need to like watch and or I'm the disruptor, whatever you want to call it. And as a product marketer, just because you can do everything doesn't mean you should, and like you will absolutely lose your mind if you don't. So how do you be strategic and like where you place the bet with that red bird? Like what angle, I guess literally, are you going to take to make sure that you have the biggest impact in the category, the setup that you'll create? Now to think about that, again, there's so much that goes into it, right? Like, does content exist? Like, are you getting leads from other people's? Are there partnerships that are working? I would say one of the things to think about in terms of prioritization, at least at a startup, is like better together stories, partnerships, maybe, and communities even super underrated in terms of how you can be successful in that. Because like when you are on a smaller team, you need to work with other people in much bigger companies that have bigger voices and more followers and, you know, more brand awareness to say, hey, we work with these people in this way. Is that just like a, you know, snowball effect? Like you can't just do it by yourself as much as you want to. And as excited as you might be as like a solo product marketer, it takes a team. Again, either that's internally at a company or with other people at other companies. Like we are in these industries to build cool things together. And I think sometimes we forget about that because we get so focused on like, you know, competitive stuff. Like I need a new competitive battle card to like increase win rates against this like tier one competitor. Okay, well, let's think like outside. Like, is that really our problem? Are we really losing to this competitor all the time? If so, like that would be a priority for sure. And if not, let's think bigger about, you know, what is that snowball effect so that when you're figuring out where to put that big red bird and you're trying to like knock everything down to be that disruptor, like you have a better strategy to do it. So I like
Yeah.
strategy way better.
No, I look, it worked out. Like it's so clear. It is so clear the way you explained it using this game. So, I like how you mentioned impact versus effort. So yes, there's so many things you can do. Doesn't mean you have to do everything. That to me took me a long time to learn, and I'm still learning it, Michelle. I'm still trying. Like we're so tempted to tackle everything because again, we don't have like one metric that we're driving. So like, let me try and shoot everywhere and see what works, what doesn't. So back to the dry definitions of OKRs and MQLs. Can you share with us any other metrics you've seen? um, let's talk about objective key results in a company and how like PMMs can fit into that bigger picture from a tangible perspective. So if you don't mind sharing
Yeah.
any metrics you've seen, you drove as a PMM in your career, and that any PMM can kind of like tackle as soon as they start their job.
Yeah. So I would say maybe two things to consider. Again, it's tricky because you're not directly in charge of these things, but something to like think about where you can say you've had impact that's very clear and very important. This is almost a shocking one. It's been interesting at the startup I'm at now. Marketing/product marketing was really in charge of pipeline generation, like where
Okay.
actual pipeline coming from. And I say that because, again, so let me take a step back. A lot of times product marketing can be under the product team or under the marketing team. And there's pros and cons to both. I think more and more I'm seeing product marketing under marketing, which is tricky because as a marketing team, most people have MQL or marketing qualified lead goals. So product marketers are kind of sucked into this vortex of, hey, I need to drive MQLs because I'm part of the marketing team, and the marketing team is that is their goal as a
Yeah.
team, right? And that's tricky because again, like you can make the best content and have you can have thousands of MQLs, but that doesn't mean it's actually turned into opportunities or pipelines. So why are you doing it? Again, if you're a product marketer, MQLs run. It is what it is. So I say that because how do you shift your focus, right? It could be like, hey, what are things that are helping generate pipeline, right? Like what am I doing to contribute to new leads being generated for the business? I think the other part of that too, maybe one of my favorites and I think underrated is really win rates, because you can't necessarily control the size of the deal, which is like pipeline generation, but you can really help control how often and how quickly you're winning. So if your win rate goes up 3, 4, 5%, that's a big deal, because the more that you're winning based on your messaging, based on your website, based on any and all content you're doing, it's huge, because again, it's like the snowball effect. So I think win rates is kind of like an under valued one that product marketers really can contribute to. And same with like sales enablement too, right? And we can talk about that. Again, I'll take my sales hats on for a second. But if you as a product marketer, and I'll explain to sales and the CS team why the heck people need to care about what you're building, which is really, our goal anyway, and they feel confident. I haven't found a good way to measure this. Like sales confidence is kind of part of this too, is like how confident is a salesperson in telling that story, in talking through objections, and, explaining the value of a product.
How do you measure that? Like, is it a survey or a questionnaire?
So I'd be curious if anyone has better ideas. Yeah, right now it's a survey. At a startup, I only have 4 salespeople, so I do like weekly one-on-ones with them to check in. And then I'm like the biggest Gong fangirl. Like, I love Gong.
Me too.
I would love to hear if you have some like good filters set up. Like, I have filters for like value props, or when I launch something, every time the feature name comes up, or like competitive mentions. Like, I love my Gong filter. So, other ways to maybe track it. But right now, from a sales confidence perspective, it's one-on-one conversations because I have a small sales team. But then I also do surveys like after a launch. How good did you feel talking about this new product, this new platform, this new solution to prospects? So
I really like that. It's interesting because once I heard someone talk about asking your team how helpful, like almost like an NPS score for PMM, how
what?
helpful was I during this launch on a scale from 1 to 10? But I prefer your approach because it's like you're not really evaluating the person, you're evaluating the confidence of the team you were tasked to enable. So it just makes so much sense. And I'm curious, what was your score? Like, were you happy with it?
So pros and cons. I have to. I'm a little critical of myself, so I'll leave it at that. But I do like a challenge. Like, I like taking on like really big competitors, or really like messy. Like, Martech is a pretty messy industry right now, with a lot of competitors, a lot of noise. I don't know if you've ever seen those charts. I mean, there's like 8,000 different companies, in the Martech space, and it grows every year. So I say that because
Wow.
there's a lot of improvement. I think breaking through the noise. Sometimes you can be more crisp on like what that looks like, or if you don't give sales or CSD, I call it retellability, like the confidence for them to be able to retell a story or retell an example. Like, you could talk about product features and what, this drove customer engagement up by 10%. Like, you can say these stats all day, but people don't remember stats. They remember a story. And so if you give sales a really good story to say, hey, we heard this, and we developed this product, and here's a specific example of how it's driving value in organizations, like an actual story, and they can retell it. You make it easy for them to say, okay, there is a beginning, a middle, and an ending in a story format. Then they feel confident that they can go on a call and share that same story. So
Yeah.
I think now I'm diverting. I'm like, there's always room for improvement. But I love my sales reps, and I want that feedback, because again, it's not about me personally, but what could I have done, or what, can I provide to make sure that they feel more confident in having those conversations and telling those stories. So
Super interesting. I am actually curious to try this in my startup now where I work, and launch a little survey to assess how confident are you to tell the story. Yeah, that's a really cool tip. Thanks for sharing, Michelle. And I wanted to ask you something else about being braggy and vocal about these metrics. So let's say you're a new PMM, you've kind of established yourself in the company, you're starting to see results, and you're measuring these metrics. How do you make sure that people know you've been kind of behind the scenes without also sounding too braggy? But you mentioned earlier performance review. I think it's important to be prepared for that, but also just for you as an individual browsing through your career, I think it's always important to be aware of your impact.
absolutely. So this is something I definitely struggled with early in my career. I'm a Midwestern girl from Ohio. Humility is like you do not brag about yourself in the Midwest. It is very that is just what it is. So I struggled with this early in my career, and I think a couple things that really helped me. One is I did a weekly product marketing kind of recap. So I called it a recap. What went well that week? What was a good conversation, or what new content is there? Or, literally just a recap of what happened that week, and just something that's exciting. And if you have a team, if you have sales, whatever, tag everyone. Hey, I heard that my sales guy had this awesome conversation about our new feature. Like, check it out here. Or, we just launched this really great piece of content. It got great engagement on LinkedIn, or, whatever it might be. Or we just announced a partnership and like got a media pickup, literally anything and everything. And I did this weekly. It's literally to the point where my CEO and CMO could say, oh my gosh, like, consistently, this is so cool. How exciting. Oh, I didn't know that. And it wasn't like, oh, well, I did this, I did this, I did this, right? It's like, hey, here's what we achieved as a
As a
company.
team.
And it was just really fun to also think, what happened? Like, what did we do this week, and what was my impact? And the other cool thing for me was at the end of the year, it was all documented in Slack. I could go back, copy and paste my weekly updates and say, okay, here's what I accomplished for the year. Like, it was a cool way to kind of go back and reflect on what, again, you might need to put together for a performance review. So that's one thing. I know some people do internal newsletters. I'm too lazy for that. So I'm like, Slack world, but I mean, not always a bad idea. Again, you have the time and the resources, like, all for it. The other thing I would say that really, really helped me is I kept a list of our wins and our losses. So anytime we won a deal, like, truly, why did we win it? And I would work with that sales rep to do like an internal win wire. So congratulations, we just won this deal. Here's why we won it. Did we win against a competitor? Did we rip out a competitor? Things like that. Because again, when you think about win rates or other ways to track your impact as a product marketer, this kind of like internal win wire, of course, again on Slack, but a really cool way for you in sales or CS, even if you got like a really cool upseller, really cool renewal that happened, to say, here's how I'm working with these other teams to achieve these victories. So again, there's like cool ways I think you can do it in Slack, team efforts all around. And then as a personal thing, I didn't necessarily do this externally, but like, keep your brag book. If you know that you had an impact on a deal that closed, if they used your collateral, if they used your demo, whatever it might be, like, track it.
Yeah.
Like,
I think, Michelle, thank you for sharing this, because it goes back to the point where you defined product marketing as a cross-functional cross-functional role, which means essentially you will be driving results with your team, with other functions. But also, I like what you said earlier about having, like, documenting small wins in a way, like your own wins, and highlighting them. The weekly way to highlight them is great because it's the team effort, but also it's okay to say when you own a metric, like the survey with your sales team, it's okay to brag about that as well. And if you mix it all up, it doesn't sound as braggy as you think it might. So
other cool thing I think I've seen happen is people then get more excited about bragging about you because they feel good. Shall recognize like the cool thing I did. I want to recognize her for something she helped me with. So it's like a nice little flywheel that everyone starts celebrating those victories together. Isn't
nice.
You, which is kind of cool. So
it's contagious. I like this. You're giving me ideas.
Yeah, my old companies used to call me the Energizer Bunny, and I don't know if like that's good or bad. There's pros and cons, I guess. But yeah,
just take it.
I've been called worse. It's fine.
Okay, I won't call you that. I promise.
I Theme McGee, Energizer Bunny. Like, I'll take it. I am not mad about it. So feel free.
You'll celebrate your wins together. It's okay.
Yeah, book. Thank you. Yeah, performance review. Quote unquote. Here's message.
Oh my God. Okay. What a way to tell your story, Michelle. So we're reaching the end of the recording, and my final question to you, it's usually my favorite because I just want to hear you kind of summarizing your key takeaway from the episode and what you'd like our listeners to remember. If you'd have to share one tip, like one thing you want people listening to this to take away with them, what would it be?
I would say like use your community. Product marketing, I think we all we all probably need therapy. No, I'm half joking, but like it's not an easy job, right? Like there are so many things happening all the time. Again, it's hard to say no because you want to help and you want, to lift everyone up with you. But if you have questions, if you're not sure where to start, if you're looking for a framework, if you're not sure like how to track your impact and you're curious about OKRs, right? Whatever it might be, like reach out to your community because I think, you don't need to feel alone or confused or like it's an interesting thing to learn. It's defined so differently. It's so hard to track. So definitely use your community, I would say is number one. Number two, like when in doubt, if you're like, what the heck am I doing? Think about yourself as like a translator. Like your job is to take a product, like literally bridge the gap between product and marketing, right? Like take the coolness of the product and translate it in a way that marketing can like take it and make a big deal about it. Like you are that bridge. And so don't forget your role as a translator. And I say that because I have seen product marketers get into, for example, I'll call it like a launch hamster wheel. Like they're launching products and they forget the marketing side of it, right? Like, oh, we just did this feature. And it's like, well, but why does the market care? Why do your customers care? And it is a tricky trap to get out of. So I say that because just remember, at the end of the day, you're not solely stuck to product. You're not solely stuck to marketing. You are that gap. And then the third thing I would say is, again, don't underestimate the power of a good story. That's what people remember. Like, I love analogies, but like you'll remember it, right? And so I think that's not, you have to do it tactfully. You have to do it the right. We have to tell the right story. But when you do that, I think it's really, really powerful. So yeah, it's good. I mean, conversations like this help so much, right? Because then you're like, okay, I know who I can go to for different things, whatever. So
Yeah.
fun.
I definitely applied your first tip here. I reached out to my community. You were great, Michelle. Thank you so much for being part of this conversation, for sharing your experience, and for accepting to do this recording with me.
Oh, of course. Thank you for having me. Thank you for doing what you're doing. I know it takes time and an effort to do these things, but I know it helps me learn as well. So thank you.